Welcome everybody to our webinar and good morning. In my session, I will talk about again the licensing regime for TCSPs. As I understand that most of you are coming from TCSP licensees, so I'm not going to go into details of the respective requirements one by one, but instead I will try to focus on those key issues to facilitate your refreshment of your own knowledge and your own revision of the respective requirements of the licensing regime. Furthermore, I'm going to take this opportunity to talk more about the renewal requirements, the renewal of license of TCSPs, because most of the licensee will have their license expired next year. To start with, I'm going to refresh yourselves about the regulation of TCSPs. As you know, the regulation of TCSPs start in the 1st of March 2018 to fulfill Hong Kong's obligation to international requirements on anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing requirements. And the regulation of TCSP forming part of the last puzzles of Hong Kong to complete its own AML CTF requirements and forming an effective and robust AML regime. For the part of TCSPs, the regulatory framework is composed of three basic elements: the licensing requirements, the AML requirements, and to ensure that TCSP complies with those requirements, an effective and robust enforcement regime has been set up to ensure the compliance of TCSPs. Regarding the two basic elements of requirements, the licensing requirements is provided by Part 5A of the Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Terrorist Financing Ordinance. That's Chapter 615 of the Laws of Hong Kong, what we call Aml in short. On the 1st of March 2018, the new Part 5A was introduced and provide the regulatory framework for the licensing requirement. And pursuant to the provision of Part 5A, the registrar is empowered to impose TCSP conditions on TCSP license to ensure that they comply with the licensing requirements. As for the AML requirements, a new Section 5A was introduced to AML, which required TCSP to comply with the requirements of Schedule 2, which cover the AML and CTF requirements. Pursuant to Section 7 of the AML, the registrar had published a guideline on compliance of AML CTF requirements for TCSPs. I will say it as AML guideline in the rest of my presentation. By publishing this guideline, the registrar provides further guidance to TCSPs regarding the compliance and of the requirements of Section 2. The registrar is also empowered, as what I have mentioned before, to impose conditions on your license to ensure the better compliance of AML requirements by TCSP licensees. Before the commencement of the licensing regime in 2018, there were already in place other requirements pursuant to other legislation regarding areas like financial sanctions, terrorist financing, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and reporting of suspicious transactions. All these are applicable to everybody in Hong Kong well before the establishment of the licensing regime for TCSPs. Here I'm going to recap the overall requirements under different provisions or different laws to give you an overall picture of how and what requirements that TCSPs are required to comply with. Before the commencement of the licensing regime, as what I mentioned, everyone in Hong Kong were subject to the requirements of other jurisdictions, other legislations on AML requirements. And on the 1st of March 2018, the introduction of the new Part 5A provides the legal backing of the licensing requirements. And the new Section 5A require TCSPs to comply with the requirement of Schedule 2, and the registrar was therefore empowered to impose conditions on TCSP's license to ensure their compliance with the licensing requirements as well as the AML requirements. The registrar has also published the AML guidelines to ensure the better compliance of the AML requirements under the Aml as well as under other legislation as well. I would strongly suggest you to visit our website from time to time to refresh your memories and knowledge on licensing requirements as well as the AML requirements. All you need can be found in our website. We have also dedicated a specialized AML page at our website so that you can see what a TCSP licensee is required in respect of AML requirements. You will see all the necessary guidelines, publications, and legislation. We also put in that page a section on publication of the Financial Action Task Force, in which you will see the publication relevant to the TCSP sector published by the Financial Action Task Force. All those publications are not strictly applicable to TCSP in Hong Kong. However, they provide some international best practices that you may make reference to when you review or trying to enhance your own system. So if you are interested in better enhance your system and align with the international best practices, you may visit our website to have a look on those publications produced by the Financial Action Task Force. To start with licensing requirement, first and foremost is that since the 1st of March 2018, everyone in Hong Kong, if they are going to carry on trust or company service business, they have to apply for a license. Because if you carry on such business without a license, you commit an offense under Section 53F of the Aml, and on conviction by the court, you may be fined up to 100,000 Hong Kong dollar or imprisonment of up to 6 months. However, if someone have applied for a TCSP license and submit the application to our Kowloon Bay office, can the person carry on trust or company service business right away? Think about it. And of course, you have to wait. Then wait for what? As you know, we need some time to process the application and to conduct fit and proper tests on all relevant persons of the licensee to see and to ensure they are fit and proper to associate or to carry on the trust or company service business. And only when we are satisfied that every such person is fit and proper to carry on or be associated with such service, then we will grant a license to the applicant. So only after we have granted the license to the application, then the applicant become a licensee and can start the trust or company service business. Why I cite this situation in my presentation today, because from time to time, we did come across cases whereby the applicant submit an application for license, And right away, they start the trust or company service business. And when we discover such a situation, of course, the application will be rejected. And in certain cases, the relevant applicant have been prosecuted and convicted by the court for carrying on trust or company service business without a license. So be careful with such a situation when you apply for a TCSP license. In my session, I'm going to share with you some of the examples that we come across recently. The first set of examples are related to the services of providing address to customers. One is providing registered office, business address, and correspondence addresses to clients. That may sound quite normal. In other words, I would say is providing virtual office service to customers. I think that sounds more real or realistic to you. And the other example is a landlord hiring or leasing offices to his lessee, and the lessee occupy the premises and report to the relevant authority, like the company's registry, that they have moved into the office and submit the new office as the registered office address. You see which one need a license or both? The first example, the company need the license to carry on such business. And there have been cases that service provider running virtual office have not applied for a license and therefore be prosecuted and convicted for carrying on trust or company service business without a license. And on the second example, the leasing arrangement is not providing an address service to customers by way of business, so it's not required to obtain a license for doing such business. The second set of examples are related to acting as company secretary. An employee being appointed by the companies as its secretary, and the second is a person acting as the company secretary of different companies by way of business. I think it's clear that the first example, the person is not required to obtain a license because it's a simple employer-employee relationship. And for the second one, because the person is providing that service, say acting as the company secretary of corporations by way of business, then this one person must apply for a TCSP license in order to conduct this service. But I'd like to remind you that these examples are not exhaustive and just provided for your general reference only. In case you want to determine whether your own business is required to obtain a TCSP license, I strongly suggest you to obtain or seek independent legal or professional advisors as you see fit. After you become a TCSP licensee, there are a number of different licensing requirements that you have to comply with. For that, I will, for the details, I will draw your attention to the guideline on licensing of TCSPs, which are available at our website. You can download it or refresh your knowledge about the licensing requirement from time to time on this guideline. But in this session, I will try to focus on 4 major licensing requirements. First of all, being a licensee, if you want to add a new person as your ultimate owner, partner, or director, unless that person is an exempted person, for example, a solicitor or a CPA, otherwise you have to apply to our Kowloon Bay office using a form TCSP3 to apply for approval of the registrar. And only after you have obtained the written approval of the registrar, then you can move on to add that person as your ultimate owner, partner, or director. If there are any change in your particulars that you have already reported to the Kowloon Bay office, then if there are any change, you have to report those changes within 1 month after the change using a form TCSP6. If not, you are not sure what sort of information you have reported to the company's registry, Kowloon Bay office, you can have a look on the form TCSP6, and you will know immediately that if you have changed in those particulars set out in the form, then you can use that form to report the respective changes in your particulars to our Kowloon Bay office. Of course, make sure that you report the change within 1 month of the change. If a TCSP license intends to cease its trust or company service business, it has to report the intended cessation to our Kowloon Bay office using a form TCSP7 before the intended date of cessation. On the intended date of cessation, we will remove the name and business address of that licensee from our register of TCSP licensees. And as a result, any members of the public searching the register of TCSP licensee on that day or after will not find the name and address of that licensee, because the person is no longer a TCSP licensee from that day on. And the last thing, but not least, is the application for renewal of license. Make sure you apply for renewal of license at least 60 days before the expiry of the license. That is a very important timeline, and I will spend the next 2 slides to explain the importance of this timeline. Here, in this example, the TCSP licensee submit the application for renewal according to the legal requirement at least 60 days before the license expires. And on this occasion, you will see that we will take some time to process the application for renewal of license, and you may be, being a TCSP license, may worry that if on the occasion that the current license expired and the company's registry still cannot complete the processing of the application, can I still carry on trust or company service business, or I must stop and wait until the registrar have renewed my license? Just be rest assured about this situation, because according to section 53K of the Aml, if the licensee has submitted the application for renewal at least 60 days before the expiry of the license will deem to be remain in force until the registrar decided to renew the license or decided not to renew the license. And on this occasion, that's the part in red. During the period from the expiry of the current license and until the license got renewed, during the red part of the period, the license of the licensee is deemed to be remain in force, and the licensee is allowed to continue its trust or company service business until its license is renewed. So there's no break of the TCSP business of the licensee, and upon renewal of the licensee, the renewed license will be valid for 3 years, starting from the day next to the expiry date of the current license and lasts for 3 years. And thereafter, the licensee may decide whether he or she will apply for renewal after 3 years. On the second example, the licensee fails to submit application at the 60 days. Then it will be too bad, because according to sections 53K, we cannot accept such application for renewal, and therefore the TCSP licensee must cease all its trust or company service business upon expiry of his or her current license. What the licensee can do? I would strongly suggest that if the licensee wants to stay in the TCSP sector, he or she should submit an application for new license as soon as practicable. And of course, we need some time to process the application and to complete our fit and proper test for all relevant persons. And until we grant a new license to the applicant, then the new license will enable the applicant to start its trust or company service again. So in the area shaded in red, that is the period after the expiry of the current license and until the new license is granted, during the red period, that applicant cannot carry on trust or company service business. So be sure, I would like to remind all of you again, the renewal of license is not automatic. The licensee must make the application at least 60 days before the expiry of the current license. And to assist all licensees, we will issue an email to all licensees around 120 days before the expiry date of their license to remind them to make the application in good time. As regards the procedure of making a renewal of license, the licensee must apply using a form TCSP2, and the application fee for renewal of license is 2,910 Hong Kong dollar. And with respect to each person who are subject to the fit and proper test, whether it's an individual or a corporation, he or she should submit a form TCSP 4 or 5, and for each such person, there will be an additional fee of Hong Kong dollar 975. If any of the relevant person of the TCSP licensee is an exempted person, like a solicitor or a CPA, the licensee have to state the position of that person in the application form TCSP2 and provide a copy of the documentary proof showing that that person does belong to the exempted category of persons. Here I have prepared 3 sets of examples whereby the application is made by a sole proprietor, a partnership, a corporation. I'm not going into detail one by one for these 3 examples. When you are trying to prepare your application for renewal of license, you may make reference to the appropriate examples to help guide you through the licensing, the renewal procedure. And of course, you can make reference to the guide of licensing of TCS, the guideline on licensing of TCSP available at our website. Regarding the Aml requirements for TCSPs, of course, my colleague Christy will have a detailed dissertation of those requirements in her session of the presentation. But I'm going to roughly go through the respective requirements with you during my presentation to give you a complete picture on what a TCSP licensee is required to comply with. First of all, those requirements under the Aml and the AML guideline covering the CDD, the customer due diligence measures, and record-keeping requirements regarding the transaction records and customer records that you maintain. As for the requirements under other legislation, TCSP licensee must comply with the statutory requirements relating to financial sanctions, terrorist financing, and proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Every person in Hong Kong are subject to the requirement of reporting suspicious transactions to the Joint Financial Intelligence Unit, the JFIU in short. In the third part of our seminar, colleagues from the police will give you details about the procedure and the requirement regarding the reporting of suspicious transactions. As I mentioned in the first slide of my presentation, there are three key elements of the regulatory system. The infrastructure will contain the enforcement of the licensing regime, because we have talked about the licensing requirement, the AML requirement, but we must establish an enforcement system to ensure that TCSP licensees do comply with those AML requirements and licensing requirements. We take a three-pronged approach on our monitoring of TCSPs. We outreach to TCSP's business office address to conduct on-site inspection. And during the inspection, we interview the respective person and inspect records, documents of the TCSP licensees or applicants. We also invite relevant persons of licensees and applicants to have interview at our Kowloon Bay office. And we also examine the various documents submitted by TCSP licensees, and we will also consider intelligence provided to us by other law enforcement agencies, and we also conduct online investigations to ensure that through this three-point approach, TCSP licensee again is fully complied with the the AML and licensing requirements. But what if any person is found not compliant with those requirements during our enforcement actions? Depending on the nature and seriousness of the contravention or non-compliance, there are a full range of sanctions available to the registrar so that she can apply in respect of the nature and seriousness of the contravention. For minor contravention, we may issue warning letter or advisory letter. And in case a licensee is trying to have contravened a condition of license or failed to comply with the requirement of Schedule 2, then the registrar may consider taking disciplinary action, including publicly reprimand the licensee or order the licensee to take remedial action to remedy the non-compliance, or even impose a pecuniary penalty of not exceeding 500,000 Hong Kong dollar. These three disciplinary actions are not mutually exclusive. The registrar can take appropriate disciplinary action or actions appropriate to the case as she wish. If the registrar considers the relevant person of a licensee is no longer fit and proper to carry on or be associated with a trust or company service business, she may suspend the license or revoke the license at all. When the license is going to expire, she may consider even not to renew the license. Of course, if any person have committed an offense under the Aml, we will take appropriate action to prosecute the offender. If you have time, you're welcome to visit our website to have a look on the highlight of disciplinary cases or prosecuted cases to see why others or other licensees have failed to do what they are expected to. To conclude my presentation, I'm going to share with you the latest statistics up to the end of last month. I'm not going to go into detail of each of the figures, but you will see from the scale and operation of licensing, monitoring, and sanction, you should have confidence that the company's registry have established a robust regulatory regime for TCSPs. So that concludes my part of presentation. Thank you.